Hey guys, this is Christian DeLupa here with All Things Gear, and this is the FabFilter Pro Q3 EQ plugin. Now, FabFilter has a history of developing easy-to-use, great-sounding plugins, and the Pro Q3 is really no exception to that rule. And it even offers a bunch of new features over the previous Pro Q2. Let's take a look at the plugin for ourselves. Let's start with design, and FabFilter is no stranger to great design. As you can see, the kind of interface is really clean, really easy to look at and kind of grasp, even though it's clear that there are a ton of powerful features under the hood. As you would expect from a FabFilter EQ plugin, you've got the frequency analyzer in the background here, which makes it easy to kind of look at the different frequencies for your track and spot things like problem frequencies that might be causing issues in your track. Up the top here, you've got an undo and redo button. Allows you to quickly undo and redo things as you would expect. You've got an A/B button here, which is a really handy feature. It means you can kind of set up your EQ the way you want, and then hit the button, set up a second EQ setting, and then quickly switch between them to kind of hear the difference. We wish more plugins kind of added that feature. Over here, you've got a bunch of different presets, which serve as really good starting points for your track. I'm EQing a piano right now, so I don't know if we've got any piano settings in here, but we might. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. Let's just put a drum one, drum bus. Really easy to quickly implement presets. As you know, is usually the case, we don't recommend anyone stick with those for good, but they serve as good starting points. Here, I'm going to go back to our default setting. Next up, we've got a help menu. Easy to kind of get help if you need it, although we don't think you will, considering how easy this plugin is to get to know. Over to the side here, we've got buttons to quickly change the amplitude range of the plugin window. What that means is that you can set it to 3 dB, make what looks like really broad changes, but then it's only 2 dB or 3 dB boosts or cuts. Then, if you want to make really actually broad changes, you can switch to 12 dB or even a massive 30 dB, make huge changes there, and so on. What it does is it makes it really easy to get surgical with the plugin if you want. If you really want to only change a few little things, zoom into 3 dB, make your changes, and then once you are ready to make larger changes, or if you want to make them at all, whoops, it's easy to do so by hitting the 12 dB or 30 dB button. Kind of struggling a little bit there, but you get the picture. At the bottom, you've got some controls that you're probably used to in other FabFilter plugins, like MIDI and latency, viewing and controls. And then you can tweak the analyzer a little bit, which is a really handy feature. It gives kind of EQing a much more visual take to it, which, never replace visuals for your ears, but it's still handy to have. For example, I'm EQing a piano here, and so that's the analyzer being shown in the background. But I also have a cello, so if I want to see how the cello is interacting with the piano, I can hit that, and cello is shown in red. You can also see kind of these red bands in the background here and here, which show areas in which frequencies may be clashing a little bit. So if I want to get rid of this a little bit in the piano, make a little bit more room for the cello, I can do that. That's easy to do. The FabFilter Pro Q3 is clearly a versatile plugin. It supports up to 24 bands, which makes it really easy to get really surgical with your tracks if you want to. And it's really easy to make broad changes or really small changes if you so choose. Presets are always a good way for a starting point for a mix, and the interface is just very simple in general. Let's take a look at the new features on offer by the Pro Q3, which make it a really much more versatile plugin than the Pro Q2, which was already really versatile in its own right. Perhaps the biggest addition is the ability to set compression on specific frequencies. It works kind of like a multi-band compressor, except that instead of every band being compressed, you can set some to be compressed and some to be just, EQ. It works similar to FabFilter's Pro MB multi-band compressor, except, in the Pro MB, there are a few more compression controls and that kind of thing. We'll put a link to the Pro MB in the description in case you're interested in checking that out. And, in many situations, you won't need all those extra controls anyway. As you would expect, you can both compress and expand, depending on what you want, and it's really easy to do so. Simply right-click and hit the Make Dynamic button. and then you can kind of change the gain here. You can do the same here to expand if we're making a boost. Change the gain, and you can see it kind of compressing or expanding our track. Let's put that over there. When you create a new band and make it dynamic, which we'll do right now, the threshold is set automatically, but you can change the threshold yourself by hitting the auto button right here and moving the fader to what you want. Really easy. And you can hide that again if you, I don't know, want to clean up your interface a little bit. Apart from the new dynamic EQ and the analyzer, which we talked about before, there are a ton of other new features on offer as well. For example, one of the coolest new features is the ability to invert gain quickly and easily. Now that comes in handy when you're trying to identify problem frequencies. For example, let's say that right here, oh, not that one. For example, let's say right here, we're kind of finding a frequency that we don't like that much in our piano. Sure, let's call it right there. Now you could kind of just drag it down if you wanted. It's a bit, finicky. You might not get the exact frequency you want. You could also just change the gain, which, is fine. It's a good solution. Or you could right click and hit invert gain. Easy, much easier than any other option. Next up is cue gain interaction, which is a way to kind of automatically adjust the cue of the band you're adjusting depending on how much you're adjusting it. Sounds a bit similar to a kind of API EQ. To activate cue gain interaction, all you have to do is hit this little settings button down here and then just make the changes you want. As you can see, it's kind of getting a little bit more narrower the higher I make it, a little bit wider if it's smaller cuts. So handy new feature, definitely one to play around with. Sounds a bit more analog than you would expect from a EQ like this, but it's a really cool feature. There are a bunch of new shapes in the plugin as well. For starters, there's the new flat tilt shape, which kind of adds a diagonal line to your EQ. Interesting for kind of, balancing out the bass and the treble a little bit. There's also a new brick wall setting, which does exactly what you would expect it to do. Simply change the shape to low cut, then hit this button here, brick wall. Allows you to easily filter out kind of frequencies on a really dramatic level. We thought kind of 96 dB or 72 dB was already pretty impressive in previous iterations of the ProCue plugin, but brick wall is really the whole way. Last but not least is support for 7.1.2 Dolby Atmos. So if you're mixing surround sound for a movie or something like that, that might come in handy. Last but not least is sound, and the FabFilter Pro Q3 sounds absolutely awesome. It sounds really transparent when you want it to. It's really easy to kind of just make smaller, subtle changes like that, although we're set to 30 dB, so that's not going to be subtle. But that's really easy to do. Or if you want, like I said, 30 dB, easy to make larger sweeping adjustments that will dramatically change your track. It's kind of the versatility of this plugin that makes it sound so great. You can really get in there and, really surgically adjust your track the way you want it to sound without kind of needing to dive into using multiple EQ plugins at once, or even needing to use an EQ plugin and a multiband compressor. You can kind of all do that in this plugin with a lot of success. If you're looking for a really versatile plugin, then honestly, look no further than the Pro Q3 plugin. It's beautifully designed, sounds great, and there are dozens of really handy features. We also think it's worth upgrading. If you have the Pro Q2 and you kind of think that you would be able to take advantage of these features, it's definitely worth the upgrade, and you do get a discount for doing so. You can buy an upgrade from the Pro Q2 or a full version of the Pro Q3 in the description below. Thanks for watching this video. My name's Christian DeLupa, here with All Things Gear, and we'll see you next time. See ya.